I'm not sure which report people look forward to more, mine or Eric's. Since we don't have an audit report this meeting. This is the time of the year that we start looking at board members, because all of our terms expire at J Summit. So
we don't expire.
well, no, you don't expire, just your term expires.
I wasn't going to come. I was going to go to Jay's governance.
Well, we can all relocate J Summit to Dallas, you know.
Or the market to the J Summit.
Even better.
The budget's taking on a life of its own as it is.
Been there, done that. As you know, the bylaws, I've mentioned this in prior meetings, calls for a maximum of 3 two-year terms. And because of all of the minor changes that went on in the prior years, we sort of ignored that so that everyone could participate in the revitalization of JCC Association. But this year we're enforcing that because it's the right thing to do, and we need to model good governance for the rest of the field. So as a result, but what's different in this year, while the following people are going off the board, I'm not going to name them all, but what's different than we've done in the past, when people have gone off the board, they've gone off the board. Everyone has been called, and importantly, we've asked everyone if we want them to continue to be involved. We've invited them to continue to come to board meetings, continue to participate on committees and task forces, because we hope in 2 years that they can come back onto the board. So we're being faithful to the governance, but we don't want to lose their input, their involvement to the agency. In addition to these people rotating off, Harriet Blank has informed us that she's stepping off the board even though her term has not ended, and that's due to other commitments. But importantly, she's going to continue to be engaged on the Israel Engagement Committee.
Steve, she's stepping off at the end of her term.
At the end of the term, which is at the J Summit, right? Not now, but at the end. She's right now the only board member, current board member who is eligible for renomination, who has chosen not to be renominated. All of the people stepping off the board, we look forward to thanking you for all of your hard work, your input to JCC Association at our board meeting at J Summit. As you can see, 3 chaplains their term has expired, and as you'll hear from Ron in a couple of minutes, if the bylaws amendments pass, the board seats for JWB representatives will now go to, rather than members of the Chaplains Council, will go to the chair of the JW Plenum, which is really the governing group for the chaplains. We still have the opportunity, if there are other chaplains who would want to have on the board, to nominate them through the regular nominating process. So, in total, of the 47 remaining board members, all of which we have agreed to serve the term other than Harriet. We have 4 more calls that have to be made by the governance committee to members of the board. If you haven't received a call, you will be getting one, but I think most of you have already. We've been looking at new board members, and we have a very good list of 20 prospective new board members. And we're now in the process of recruiting them. Well, we've had a few turndowns. Many times people have said, it's just not the right time, but will you consider me in a year or 2 years to join the board? And we're not going to lose touch with those people. And I'm pleased to let you know that we have 3 people who have accepted already. The first one is Larry Gottlieb, who is currently the president of Samuel Field Y and Central Queens Y. He's been on the board of the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services. He previously chaired the Long Island Division of UJA and served on the board, and he's a retired partner of Cooley LLP. The next one, Susan Saul from Palo Alto, who serves on the board there, and also serves on the San Francisco Coalition of Agencies Servicing the Elderly. She's co-founder of Silverbright LLC, which serves seniors in the San Francisco area by providing transportation for a more independent lifestyle. She served on agencies such as Hospice, Jewish Home for the Aged, Jewish Family and Children's Services, and the Jewish Community Foundation. The next person who has agreed to serve on the board is Jessica Sillins from New York. She is the owner and CEO of BTP Real Estate, a real estate management and investment firm located in New York City. Is a board member of the Robert Sillins Family Foundation, has been an active member of AABGU since 2004, so I can't figure out where that name came from. But importantly, these are really three good people to join the board, and as I say, we have asked out and we're talking to people, and good people ask lots of questions when you ask them to be on the board, and it takes time to recruit. And I know we'll get a good number more new board members, but even the ones that we talk to, even if they join the board hopefully in a couple of years, or they don't join the board, it's been a good, important exercise in creating relationships and partnerships. We'll update the board as we finalize this and we have new candidates. We'll update the board as Gary decides on who his officers will be. So you'll get all of that information. 4 years ago, we did a board assessment. You may remember. And it was a controversial, should we do it, shouldn't we do it? Just because of the timing, we didn't have an exec at that point, and I think the results were very helpful. It provided a roadmap for the governance committee, and as a board, we tackled many of the issues. And as I mentioned in the last report, we felt that we should do another board assessment. And I just want to let you know, the questionnaire for the board assessment will be going out pre-Pesach. So before you clean out your cabinets, get rid of all the crumbs, get rid of all the comments, first thing to do is complete your survey. Okay? The governance committee has been spending a lot of time looking at the bylaws, and we're lucky to have a bylaws maven on the board, and that's Ron, who has spent untold hours with the help of Dory and the guidance from the committee, going through the bylaws, doing significant changes, technical changes, and as I told the governance committee, I like to look at the bylaws sort of like Simchat Torah. And there is a J in JCC, so I figured it was an important thing. You know, when you get to the end, you get to Simchat Torah, you read the end of the Torah, and what do? You quickly rewind it, and you start at the beginning. And that's, I think, good bylaws. As soon as you change the bylaws, you look at it again, because it's a living document. As the agencies change, as the environment and the world changes, that's what we do, and we've been doing that. And what I want to do is turn it over to Ron now, so that the board can see the changes that will be recommended to the delegates at J Summit. And I want to again thank Ron for all of his hard work in this area. Thank you.
Now for the most exciting part of this meeting, well, except for Eric's report on finance. We've spent a bit of time doing what Steve just mentioned, which is going through the bylaws and trying to think through what changes should be made to make it more effective and to really keep current with what's going on with this agency. What we tried to do for today's report is to give you a few of what we think are the primary substantive, if any of these are really that, substantive issues, and leave for your further consideration all of the technical changes, which if you read the materials that were sent to you, I think by Gabby about a week ago, you'll love it. I mean, it'll probably be better than trying to get some sleeping pill to go to sleep at night. It's a lot of red ink or blue ink, if it came through that way, in terms of changes, but it really does take us to the next step of modernizing our bylaws. So let's look at this from the standpoint of what these primary changes are, and to respond to any questions you may have. We'll have a motion at the end of this. The first is the member of board officers. As you can see, we've reduced the potential of 7 vice chairs to 5. In any case, a minimum of 3, and associate secretaries, we really only need 1 to work so hard to assist the secretary and all the work the secretary does. The principal office is currently set in our bylaws as being the City of New York, and we decided that since Jerome lives in Englewood, he might want to change the address at one point. It actually enables us to, in a few years, we're far away from completing this lease for the space which we have now, which is really commodious. But in the future, we could move the office to a location outside the City of New York, as long as it's within the parameters of New York law, which is the primary law that regulates our organization. The number of directors, as you've heard a couple of times today, is being reduced, but the minimum is being reduced from 70 to 50, which means there is no maximum. And really the reason for reducing it is to give us a little bit more flexibility as we move forward. Still a large number, and my guess is it's not going to have much practical effect. We'll still have somewhere around 60 or 70 members on the board, as Steve just reported. The next change that we're making is we had a provision in the bylaws that said that you had to be a U.S. citizen except in certain circumstances. But thanks to Frank Trachtenberg, we have come to the realization the name of this organization is the JCC Association of North America, and therefore we should say that anyone who's a citizen of North America can sit on the board. Now, I thought there were two countries in North America, the U.S. and Canada. I'm told yesterday that we are considering adding Mexico to our organization, which I think would be wonderful. But I'm also told by Fran that there are really 23 countries in North America, which for the life of me, I looked at the map and I couldn't count 23, and then she said, here, and she gave me a list. So I just want you to know that I'm volunteering to go to Bermuda to find our next member, with Leah, to find our next member of the board.
Ron, you do have several from Texas. So.
Oh, well, okay, we do have a few from Texas, but you know, California thinks of itself as a separate republic too. I mean, just, so I think that's controversial. You can now, at least 50% of the members of the board have to be citizens of a North American country. Boy, that's great. We've talked a bit today, the last couple of days, about JWB, which is really interesting. The name of this organization used to be JWB, and now a division of the organization is JWB, and I never realized. I always thought when we talk about JWB, we're talking about the Chaplains Council and the work that our chaplains do around the world. The fact is that technically the JWB plenum is the agency, or within our agency, which is responsible for JWB. So we now have a provision that defines JWB plenum as the responsible JWB agency or organization, and the chair of the JWB plenum will be a member of our board as a director of the portfolio. The JWB can designate, JWB plenum can designate delegates to our biennial, and we've deleted, and that's what the next provision says, under directors of portfolio, that there's no longer a number of chaplains or members of the chaplains council or plenum to be on the board. But as Steve mentioned before, we do have a number of chaplains who over time have expressed an interest in the overall organization, and we want to be sure that when we look at new directors, we include them in our overall list, but there will no longer be a designated JWB representative on this board other than the chair of the plenum. As part of this change of directors with portfolio, we've eliminated the president of the Florence G. Heller Foundation as an automatic member of the board. Some of you may not even know what that is. Florence G. Heller was a president, or we would call it chair today, of this organization. She was the first woman president of the organization, who preceded the likes of Esther Leah Ritz and Ann Kaufman and Paula Sidman, who have since become chairs. And there was a foundation that she formed that had assets, and those assets were used to do research for JCCs. The fact is that the Heller Foundation assets have now become more de minimis. They're now administered by Bob Kinsel in the office of the Chief Financial Officer, and it no longer has a real function, foundation. So we've taken the foundation reference out, but we've inserted the JCC Global Foundation, which means Steve Seiden, who's now the chair or the president of JCC Global, will get to sit on this board, even though he gets to sit on this board because he's a past chair. It's all very confusing. So we've added that.
He's so special, he gets 2 votes now.
If you listen to him long enough. Well, anyway. The other group that we have on the board is the professional execs. Those of you who are actually sitting as execs in JCCs with nominations primarily from Daron and consulted with Gary. We have some 12 members of our board who are who are execs of JCCs. They rotate, as do others. Because we're reducing the minimum number to 50, we wanted to be sure that these folks don't take us over. And so we're putting a provision in that, in any event, no more than 20% of the board can consist of execs from JCCs. Anybody who wants to take up a militia with me so that we can keep them at bay, I'll let you know.
Ron, is there a reason why we limit that to executive directors? I mean, I could foresee an instance where, somebody who is director of Jewish education at a JCC might be the most appropriate.
That question is coming from a former chair of this organization. He's a lawyer, he's a defraud lawyer, I guess. He's no longer an active lawyer. And I won't say who Alan Solo is, but he asked a question. So let me read this provision. It says not fewer than 7 or more than 12 directors shall be nominated from among the professionals in North America, serving affiliates. The answer to your question is, you don't have to be an exec to be that person. Is that what it says up there?
No,
It says executive director.
Oh, well,
That's why I asked.
okay, this is a Doryism, it's language, her language and mine are fighting with each other about it, but it's okay.
I actually went by what was written.
Do you have anything else, Alan? So we had the Fran resolution a minute ago about North American countries, and now we have the Lissy resolution. It says we don't want to call it a biennial anymore. We want to call it a J Summit. I was thinking that one of the things you could do with the J Summit, by the way, is to have J Summit dancers or something. So we've now, in honor of Lissy, we've now referred to the J Summit as another term for biennial convention. I hope that makes everyone happy. And among the directors that we do have on the board are a number, as many as 12, that would be designated by the chair. And we do have a history of reaching out into the communities, usually wider than just simply the JCC leadership, but the overall Jewish communal leadership, to serve on our board. And we've had some very distinguished people who come through that process. But in recent years, we found that we've used that provision in the bylaws to enable us to take people who would otherwise be termed out, be designated through the chair, and then have a new 3-term limitation, which has allowed people like me to be on this board for an awfully long time without turning off. You got to stop that. And so what we're doing is we're now saying that the JWB, the designees by the chair, will get 1 term without regard to term limits, but otherwise will be subject to term limits, meaning that if someone has served for 6 years, they can be given another 2-year term through designation by the chair, but that's it. So it again keeps us more in tune with what we're really trying to achieve, which is to rotate the board. Finally, there are some new definitions that I just wanted to highlight. Again, technical, but useful to know. We had sprinkled throughout the bylaws previously the concept of notice for various types of meetings. What we've done is we've pulled that all together under 1 term called notice. And so whenever there's a need for notice in the bylaws, it's related to the bylaw, the definition, which we've now inserted. We also have a waiver of notice provision, which is the same. People can waive notice. If you don't get notice about a meeting, but you show up at a meeting and you don't complain, you've waived notice of that meeting. And there are some other bases for waiver of notice. We also have a provision now on quorum. Quorum's always an issue. Do we have enough people here to make a decision and so forth? The issue of quorum really applies in 3 different areas. One is the members, the delegates who attend a biennial meeting at the biennial convention and make decisions such as modifying these bylaws. You have to have at least the same number of people sitting as members. That would be equal to 50% of the board. So if you have a 70-person board, you'd have to have at least 35 people sitting in a members meeting for its decisions to be effective. For the board itself and for the executive committee, we've set a 34%. Again, if you have a 70-member board, that's 34%, somewhere around 30 members have to be present to have action. And for the executive committee, it's the same 34%, and for other committees, it's 50%, but no less than 3 people being present, because sometimes the committee only may have 5 people. So those are the technical provisions of the change that I'm highlighting here. Again, you can go and read to your heart's delight all the other changes that we referred to, and I assume you all have. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them, other than from Ellen Sol. I see I put you all to sleep. Oh,
wait. I had 2 questions on the prior slide. One was that 50% of board members have to be from a North American country.
yes.
I'm surprised it's not a much bigger number than that.
Well, the reason is because we do have, we can, for example, have the chairman, not the president, but the chairman or the chair of the JCC Global be on our board, and that chair may live in Lithuania.
Right, but 50% of directors? I'm surprised it's not 90%
I'll tell you
directors.
what. There is an answer, and the answer is we can change it. But not this time, because we've already got this in bed.
Okay, that's fine. And then the other question, and I will defer to Dory, but when we were redoing our bylaws, we were admonished for having people who were not elected to our board and were appointed by virtue of portfolios elsewhere.
Let me make one thing clear, and I didn't make it clear before, and that is all of the people that I've talked about, with the exception of directors with portfolios, because there's only 2 of those. There's the JCC Global person and the the chairman of the JWB Plenum. Everybody else, including those designated by a chair or designated by the chair and the CEO or execs, can only be nominated by those individuals. They still have to be elected. Just as the nominees of the
okay.
Nomination and Governance Committee have to be elected after nominated. So that's the answer. Any other questions?
Can voting be by proxy or by telephone?
There are provisions in the bylaws about that. In our case, we do not allow any kind of vote by proxy. We do have provisions about telephonic or electronic meetings where a vote would be counted.
So in a meeting like this, if I called in, I can vote?
That's correct. But you could not have your wife sitting next to you voting for you. We would probably come to your house and do something about that. Jay?
Yeah, it's not at all related to Alan's question, but on the same bullet point, when it came to the professionals, if I read it right, it said that there would be a max, is it a max of 12? Like that's the most professionals, regardless of the overall size. So the board gets to be 100 people, they're still capped at 12, right?
Yes.
Okay, secondarily, on the flip side, I don't want to be overrun by these nasty professionals, but was there any thought in there being a minimum number? So there would be
7 is the minimum number. But-
Oh, sorry.
But it's a
Wasn't
minimum
specific.
subject to, you can't be more than
Right,
20% of the board.
Got it. Okay.
Anything else? Gosh, I can't believe it's such a controversial set of discussions. All right, Mr. Chair, I have a motion on behalf of the Nominating Governance Committee that this board recommend to the members, the board does not itself act on the bylaws, recommends the adoption of the resolutions proposing changes in the current bylaws, and that a letter be sent by you, sir, as the chair of the agency, regarding the board's recommendations, and with the recommendation to the members that they approve these bylaw changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
In honor of Phil Sheepman, I
But you aren't wearing a fancy sweater, so
That's right. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, there are only 2 exceptions to everything he just said. Andy is our legal counsel. We work with him to make sure he stays on the board, and as the bylaw guru, this is for life, so you're stuck.
Actually, Gary, I do have one
No, you can't get out.
closing comment. For those of us who are members of the bar, who toil, if you will, in the vineyards of the law, and all of us really know that the history of setting rules and guidelines really goes to the Talmud. And all of us have studied at one point or another in our lives the rules that come from the Talmud and of course from the American Constitution. So too, I think these bylaws are really living instruments that change with time and allow us to continue to look at the way we operate and making appropriate changes. And in so doing, to act as a true guidance for our association, for this board, for the movement, so that we can ensure that JCCs will continue to be a primary source of value and pride for the North American and the world Jewish community. Technical discussion with a very important meaning. Thanks a lot.